Bitwala to promote our equity token event. So let's take a look around.
My name is George, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bitwala, and we have the aim to create the first blockchain bank in the world. So we're working really close with the government in Germany to enable people to use these new technologies without having the hustle that the people have to go through at the moment. My ultimate goal was always that at a certain point my mother can use blockchain or Bitcoin to handle transactions internationally as an investment vehicle or to trade assets. But at the moment it's quite complicated, and also the regulations are not there. So we're doing step by step the way to found the first blockchain bank in the world. And we're quite far already, so 2018 we're going to launch our new bank accounts, which means the first time you have your bank account with an IBAN, the big and all that protection that you know from your normal bank. But on the other side you get crypto wallets that you can trade with, and you can hold assets, and all fully protected and regulated. And also the tax part, so nothing is clear in the ecospace at the moment, and so this is one of the aims that we have at Bitwala to integrate or make it possible for companies to integrate this new technologies inside the company.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges small or big companies are going to have adapting this technology?
So first of all, bigger companies always have the problem that they have a huge compliance office, right? And they always have to push this through. I went through this because I started consulting people on blockchain 2010, 2011. I consulted companies like Deutsche Bank, IDEO, Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, how to integrate it into their current system. And it went always through the innovation labs, and it went through all the certain steps, but at a certain point there was always the case where no, we can't do this, this is too new, regulation is not in place. And so I think a big hurdle is the regulatory part, where you really have to get into it. And I think what we think at Bitwala is one part is to take just everything away from the companies that want to integrate blockchain into their company in terms of financial services, and just make it usable and give them stuff that they know. So give them an exchange rate in euro, give them US dollar, this is what they can handle, and we handle the whole blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum part. And then I think we did a huge step into mainstream, because then people can actually think about, okay, I can present this to my management board and they will accept it and understand it, but until then it's just a mess. You go there, you present, and they're like, okay, how do I do accounting with Ethereum? How do I handle this? Is it going through, or do I have to book it? How often do I have to update the price? How many times do I have to update my books internally? And these are all hustles that we have, and we just want to get rid of this and do it ourselves.
So, seeing as there's so much hype in the space at the moment, Alexander, maybe you can answer this question. What promise of disruption will this really bring, and which industry is really going to benefit from blockchain?
I think the low-hanging fruit clearly is in the world of financial services. So any kind of industry that relies on a transactional process that has high requirements for auditability, for lots of participants, within a transaction flow that need to share information. Those are processes and systems that can benefit from blockchain technology. And transactional banking, reconciliation within the banking industry. These are all kind of areas where the rubber meets the road. You can see an enormous, tangible, immediate benefit. The challenges that you have really with implementing these things, isn't so much about illustrating whether there's a benefit or demand. It's simply the time-honoured fact of change management, and you're trying to deploy technology into organisations that have very convoluted infrastructures, that have very convoluted software stacks with, in many cases, hundreds of different software platforms, all working together, all trying to reconcile against each other, and really where you see the savings with efficiencies with this type of technology is wholesale replacement of infrastructure. Because blockchain really only works very well at scale where you have lots of participants within a system that all need to share the same data set of information. Otherwise, you may as well have gone down a traditional database route. I don't actually know how my smartphone works. I just know that it works. And the fact that it works means actually I don't care how it works, because it's an elegant and well-designed product. And this sort of draws me back into that, blockchain is a very important technical process, an innovation, if you will, the convergence of messaging and database, all under the same roof. It allows us to build vast distributed systems that are very efficient for sharing information, single source of truth. But at the end of the day, what it doesn't do is it doesn't build a product for us. And what I think is really, really, really important is that people go back to focusing on making products and services that people or companies need to use, or indeed want to use, and making them in a way that's better than before. Because what really doesn't wash for me, and what I see a large amount of in this industry is, oh well, we're doing this thing, where there is a problem, but we're doing it with blockchain. And so, well, why should we really care that you're doing it with blockchain? Because you've made a cumbersome and complicated product that people can't really get to grips with and get to use. So my hope for the future is that we won't see the blockchain, that we'll see beautiful products and services that ordinary consumers can use, and they don't need to be told about blockchain, that the value of the service and the accessibility of the service and the usability of it sells itself. I think it needs to be swept under the carpet and hidden and left for technologists to work with in back rooms to create incredible products, incredible infrastructure in a seamless way for consumers to use, because really that's what's missing from the industry at the moment. I think you'll resonate upon this, because that's the whole premise of what you guys are doing in Bitwala, is trying to create services that are accessible by normal people without actually having to care about the underlying technology, and that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I can add something to this. When I was pitching my idea about blockchain and how we did it, our account manager in our investment fund told us to delete blockchain from every single page. So we couldn't explain in the first place okay, we want to build a blockchain startup or something. They said focus on what you deliver. So access to high-speed transactions, you can bank unbanked people. So these are the stuff that are the use cases, and then you have one page in the end where you explain the whole technology part and how you do it, and there we were allowed to use blockchain. But that's exactly what he said, hide it in the end. If people are interested how you do it, explain it, but you don't have to put blockchain on every slide that you do.
So when your grandmother can do a payment with blockchain, that's when we succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you another question, because you guys just implemented SegWit, right? So that basically, maybe you want to tell these people what SegWit is and how that reduces the transaction cost.
So SegWit is basically a second layer. We have the Bitcoin protocol, and the problem is that the Bitcoin protocol is pretty limited. When you take a look, you can process eight transactions per second, and that's not close to what Visa or MasterCard are doing. So what we need is a certain layer where you can add additional information, where, for example, lightning channels, sidechains, because what I always say is when we want to have a scalable blockchain, we can't handle everything on-chain. Think about the Internet of Things. If you plug every device here into the Internet of Things world, and they all have a wallet and they all pay each other, you will never have a blockchain that can process all the payments. So what we definitely need is we need the blockchain itself, but we also need transactions that are handled off-chain. I give you a simple example. When I go to a coffee shop and buy a coffee for 50 cents or €1, whatever, it doesn't necessarily have to be on-chain, because the possibility of a double spend or these things are just not existing if I want to pay someone €1 or 50 cents. But if I want to transfer €1,000 or 10,000 euro, I better make sure that these transactions are processed properly on the blockchain. And this is why I think we need this second layer technology, which is called in the Bitcoin world Lightning, or in the Litecoin network Lightning channels. That means not all the transactions are handled on-chain, but the important ones are.
ICOs are super fascinating because it's democratized fundraising, and this is something that you can't avoid talking about blockchain with. So, you know, but it's also something that is extremely inaccessible for consumers. And, you know, we've got these new mechanisms where people can issue a distributed token to represent some element or facet of their project. It might be a security, it might not be a security, depending on how it's designed. But you know, we're seeing a revolution in the democratization of fundraising, and that's actually really one of the first super cool real-world use cases that, you know, that people are now using to raise enormous quantities of capital, and, you know, and mind-blowing. Like 1.6 billion US dollars has been raised so far using this technology. You know, and you know, this is so revolutionary that even stock exchanges are panicking about the future of the equities market. Because if you have stuff like this, it really doesn't make sense to do an IPO. We got a question! So the question was the view of ICOs when there's no role for the token within the business model, as in a utility versus security. So we've been focused a lot on this recently, about, you know, trying to navigate the pathway between utility token and what might be viewed as a security. And the good thing is that there's lots of legislation about securities, right? The rules are really, really, really very clear. Yeah. If it quacks like a duck, if it looks like a duck, you know, if it swims like a duck, it's a duck. Like there's no grey area in my mind that, you know, if you want to do an ICO and that token has some kind of dividend-paying structure or it has a shared revenue, like whether you like it or not, from an ideological perspective, it's a security, and we have very comprehensive rules surrounding that internationally that govern that. There's plenty of opportunity for application tokens as well, and that's very legitimate, but it's a very, very murky area. And, well, actually, it's not a very murky area. It's a very, very clear area that people are murkily trying to avoid, you know, their obligations under international securities law.
And I also think, like, the ultimate goal of every startup or every company is to actually put securities on the blockchain. This is what we at Bitwala are trying again. Like, we try to issue one of the first proper equity tokens on the world, and we want to follow every single rule that the security rules are there, and we have, of course, to follow them. We want to do full KYC, we want to follow the rules that have been created for a purpose. It's not that these rules were made out of nothing. It was just like in the early days of stock exchanges, there were so many people doing similar stuff actually that's happening at the moment with ICOs, and a lot of those ICOs, I fully agree, they will vanish and they will have like proper lawsuits against them because there's so many rubbish out there. But I think the ultimate goal is again to take this use case and put it onto a proper technology and use it in a way that makes sense for the end customer, for the investors and for the companies, and then we're at a situation where we're all happy and we have just a faster and more global way of accessing capital worldwide.
I think it's worth noting on that point that you know, regulators are waking up to this now, and they really do understand the situation. They might not be taking enforcement action very quickly, but just last week, the Ontario regulator in Canada basically gave provision for a company to list an ICO that is most definitely a security. So, you know, it's come through the proper channels. You know, it's got an offering memorandum. It has all of the kind of things that you would need for a security offering, but they're leveraging blockchain and, you know, ICO-like technology to deliver the product. And I think it's really important that this technology comes full circle and comes in to interact with the market in a way that people understand, because, you know, change doesn't happen quickly, it happens slowly and incrementally, and, you know, we need to take tangible steps to make everyone happy and comfortable.
On that note, I think we have to wrap it up, but I was just going to say you can run a fully legally compliable ICO in the UK. That is a security. That is a thing. By the way, we do that. But that's the thing. So in case if you're just wondering. Anyways, I think we have to wrap it up at this point.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.